Okay, so sum if s, average if s, and count if s were added to Excel 2007. So that's a long time ago, and so most people have those versions of Excel. But what do we do to do conditional, conditional sums, averages, and conditional counts before we had those sum if s, average if s, and count if s functions? Well, we use database statistical functions. Okay, and these are still fairly useful. You go to fx, category, database. So there's a bunch of functions: daverage, dcount, dcount a, dmax, dmin, dstandard deviation. There's a whole bunch of these here. Okay, and the ones we most often use are daverage, I think, dcount, dcount a, and dsum. So for instance, what does dsum do? The D means database. So it means you can do a summation based on a criteria. In other words, a subset of your data can basically be used to do a calculation. Now the question is, how do you define the subset of data that's using the calculation? So dsum would do a sum on a subset of your data. daverage would do an average on a subset of your data. dmax would do the maximum number on a subset of your data. Okay. Standard deviation would do the standard deviation on a subset of your data. dProduct would do a multiply all the elements in a column based on a subset of your data. Okay, dget is a little bit different. We'll talk about that later. Okay, but the key is what's called the criterion range. Okay, and a criterion range would be something like this for our purposes now. I mean, a little bit in the next video we'll change this a bit, but the first row of a criteria range should be a heading from your database. So let's go to that makeup data again. Okay, so we have name and product, which are columns here. Okay, and then below that you sort of specify the subset of your data that you want to do a calculation on. Okay, and you start again with the criteria range. The first row are column headings. That'll change when we do something called the computed criteria, but don't worry about that now. Column headings. And then we list possible values in each column. And then the same row, if they're in the same row, it gets treated as an and a different row in or. Now this is what's important. The or we've had no way to do. The sum if s, the count if s, those criteria ranges, they do ands. In other words, you need all the conditions to be true. We've done nothing involving ors, so basically this is a nice way to handle ors. So let's do a couple of examples here. We want to know how much lip gloss did Jen sell in dollars. Okay, so the criterion range would look like this. The name is Jen and the product is lip gloss. Okay, and so now we would do a dsum because we want to do a sum based on that criteria. Now there's a couple of ways you can put this in. So you can do dsum. Okay, the database is all the data. Okay, actually let me just show you that. So data, okay, it's column H through M. Let me just highlight that in yellow. That's important, actually. You'll see why. Okay, so what we've got here, we should list the columns numerically left to right. That's fairly useful. Oops. Okay. You'll see how that can be useful in a couple of minutes. Okay, so I want to know what Jen sold of lip gloss in dollars. In other words, every time the row is Jen and the product is lip gloss, add up the dollars. Okay, so I can do this a couple of ways. I do dsum. The database means all the data, and that's all the yellow columns. I name that data. Okay, now the next thing is the field. Okay, what column do I want to do the calculation on? Well, that's dollars, which is the fifth column of the database, so I could list that there. And then the criteria is this range in yellow. The name is Jen and the product is lipstick. Okay, so I get the right answer there. Now another way to do this, I could do dsum on data instead of the fifth column. Okay, I could point to the column name, which is dollars, and use the criteria. Or I could say dsum data and I couldn't care less which way you do this, I could put the column name in quotes, and there is the criteria. I mean, either way is fine. Let's tackle this problem. What's the average number of units of lipstick Jen sold in the East? We know we could do this with an average of S, but the criteria here would look like this. Name is Jen, and product is lipstick, and location is the East. And so I would do a D average, because I want to do an average. Now the database is data. Okay, units is the fourth column, and this is the criteria. So that should work. 42 point, in other words, you took every row where Jen sold lipstick in the East and add up the units, divide by the number of rows, you get 42.25. Okay, now we can show how we use this with an OR, these database functions with an OR, and that's a little bit trickier. Okay, so let's take a look here. So the question is, how many dollars did Emily sell, or dollars sold in the East? Now, why is that tricky? You want to add up every row where the name is Emily, add up the dollars. Add up every row where the region is the East, location is the East, and add up the dollars. But then you're double counting rows in which Emily sold stuff in the East, you'd have to subtract that off. But the OR knows how to do that. So notice this criterion range, Emily and the East are in different rows. That means name is Emily or the location is the East. So I would do a D sum. Again, it's data. Now I want dollars as the fifth column counting left to right. And the criteria here is 3 rows. So Emily or the East would be 76,000. Okay, dollars of lipstick sold by Colleen or Zara in the East. Okay, well, I could use this criteria range for that. See, the first row says take the name being Colleen, the location, the East, and the product lipstick. And then we do an OR between rows, or take Zara selling lipstick in the East. Okay. And so I could do a D sum on the dollars column of data, and the criteria range would be these 3 rows. Now I could also do that by adding 2D. I could do it to add 2 sum if S's or add 2D sums. It wouldn't matter. Okay, let's try another one here. Number of lipstick transactions not in the East. Okay, now this is where we need to do a D count. We want to count every row where the product is lipstick and the location is not the East. So that would be right there. Okay, product lipstick and the criteria is less than or greater than the East. I could do that with a count if S here. Location is not the East, product lipstick, but let's do it with a D count. So D count counts stuff involving, counts things involving numbers. So I want to know how many transactions. So the question would be, which column should I look at to do the counting on? Well, it doesn't really matter as long as I pick a column that has quantitative data. You see, if I do a D count on column 1, it won't work because there's no numbers there. Okay, so but I could do a D count. I'll do data. Okay, let's do column 4 units, and then this would say the product is lipstick and the location is not the East. Okay, now that works. But if I had done a D count data and I'd done that on column 6, which is location, I'll probably get a 0, right? Because there's no numbers in that column. But if you simply change that to a D count A, you're fine. Because D count A is like count A, it counts anything that's non-blank. Okay. Total dollars of lipstick sold by Jen in 2004. Okay, so the criteria would be all these things layered together. Name is Jen, product is lipstick, the date is after New Year's Day 2004, the date is before New Year's Day 2005, and then I would just do a D sum data, the fifth column is dollars, and the criteria range is these 4 here. Now we'll get to computed criteria later, but to close this video, let's see if we can leverage DBase functions with the data table that we learned earlier. So I want a summary of what every woman sold of every product. Okay, so we'll do a 2-way data table. So I have to do one example of what a woman sold of each product. So let's do Betsy selling eyeliner. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so if I've got Betsy selling eyeliner, it's going to go right here. Oh, sorry. I mean, when we're done in the data table, that's where it's going to go. So in the upper left-hand corner, I put a formula that feeds off this criterion range. Okay, name, Betsy, product, eyeliner. So I do a D sum on data. Dollars is the fifth column, and here's the criterion range. Okay, so that'll tell me what Betsy sold of eyeliner. Okay, now if I do a two-way data table, the row input cell, those are products. So that should feed into this cell, which is Y26. And the column input cell, these names would feed into X26. So now I select this range, I go data, what if analysis, data table. Okay, the row input cell we said was the product, that goes here. The column input cell is the woman's name, that goes there. And they're all the same, so I got to hit F9. Okay, because remember, formulas tab, calculation options, I had automatically set for tables there. So I did F9. But for instance, Betsy, you can see, sold that much of eyeliner. Jen sold this much of lip gloss. And if you change anything in the original data, this would update when you hit the F9 key. Well, in the next video, we'll learn about computed criteria, which works out a little bit differently than does the criteria that we've set up so far, in which the first row is any column in the database. In computed criteria, the first row has to be anything that's not a column in the database, because you're sort of creating a criteria. So we'll discuss that in the next video.
Okay, so thanks for watching, and there's a free course, a free 21-day course from Dr. Winston, and all of these videos are coming from one of three books. So first, this one, which you can see here at the top of the screen, Microsoft's book, which has 355 reviews, and then it's, let's see, 4.6 stars. It's coming from this book as well, his marketing analytics book, which is down here, and you can sort of see 4.5, or his newest book, his analytics stories book, which is here. And with that one, you can see it's 4 point something, or maybe even 5. I don't think it's 5. Yeah, 4.8. And so, yeah, anyways, in the description, there's a free 21-day course from Dr. Winston, or you can go to excelwithwayne.com/free, and it'll be there. But again, thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, just please let us know. Thanks.